Raised my sister after our parents abandoned us, but she still chose them over me and didn't invite me to her wedding. Her fiancé found out and cancelled everything. I, 32F, was not invited to my sister's wedding, which took place 3 days ago, and it was really disheartening because I think that I was the one who had pretty much raised my sister ever since we were really young. So she is around 8 years younger than me, and we basically grew up without our parents. When I was 10 years old, my parents just randomly woke up one day and decided that they were sick of being our parents. It was not very surprising, since even when I was really young, it was very apparent to me that they treated me very differently than other parents treated their kids. They always maintained a distance from me and my sister, as they were not really interested in building a relationship with us. I tried really hard for a very long time to get close to them, but it never really worked and they were always too busy for us. We had sitters to take care of us and at other times, our grandparents. My sister was just 2 years old when our parents decided that we would be better off living with our grandparents, my dad's parents, on a more permanent basis. This decision was influenced by the start of business together, but for that, it would require them to move away. Both my parents had been working at the time, but I guess the idea of being partners in a business really appealed to them, so they decided to take his coworker up on that offer. And it worked out for them since they are doing pretty well right now and have been for the past many years. But while it was all great for them on the financial and work front, they gave up their family for this. My dad could have easily chosen to take his daughters with him, but he decided to leave us behind with our grandparents, and it was just he and my mother who moved away to help set up the business. I was used to my parents ignoring me, but for them to completely abandon me and my sister and leave us with our aging grandparents was just something that nobody had seen, not even my grandparents. They were not happy about this arrangement and they tried really hard to fight with my dad and get him to take us with them, but he insisted that he wouldn't be able to take out the time for us and we would just be another burden on him, which he couldn't afford because he and my mother needed to channel all their energy into the new business. My grandparents never told me about any of this and tried to put on a happy face, but they forgot that I had ears, and when they were fighting, they never really bothered to keep things quiet. So at a very young age, I knew what their priorities were, and at the age of 10, I decided that I was never going to count on them for anything in my entire life. After they left, it's not like they were out of my life for good, but they would still come back during the holidays. The only difference was that after they left me with my grandparents, I decided not to have any expectations from them, and whenever they would visit, I would also maintain my distance from them. So I think it's very obvious that I had a very strained relationship with my parents. My sister was very young at the time, so I tried to be there for her to the best of my abilities, and understanding why our parents were not always there for her like other parents was difficult, so I would just always dodge those questions. But as she grew older, it became more and more difficult for me to avoid those questions, and even my grandparents started finding it hard to not answer. Eventually, when she was around 14, we told her the truth, and after that, she started behaving in a very confused way with our parents whenever they would visit. By then, their business had started doing well and they could have easily moved back, but they chose to stay away because they had already built a life for themselves there. And we were already pretty grown, so they didn't see the point of coming back and believed that we would be able to handle our lives on our own now. After my sister found out about everything, she would try to act aloof when our parents would visit, but occasionally, she would slip right into her old behavior around them. I didn't even blame her, it must have been confusing for her as a kid. Anyway, just like my parents, I had also built a life away from them, and gradually, I made my peace with their absence. I graduated high school, I graduated college, and I got my first job, all without them. Unfortunately, I lost my grandpa when I was 22 and my grandma when I was 26. The only thing that I'm thankful for is that they were at least here to witness me graduate high school and get my first job, and by the time I lost both of them, I was doing reasonably well enough in life. Even my sister was 18 and an adult when our grandma passed away, and our maternal grandparents had passed away very long ago, when I was in my early teens, so we were completely on our own after that. But I would honestly say that I had been raising my sister way before our grandparents passed away, and even though it was my parents who would always send money back home for us, I was the one who was actually raising her. Because let's be real, our grandparents were pretty old, and half of the time, they didn't even know what was going on in our lives. They were just doing the best that they could, but I was the one who was actually there for my sister. So the fact that she eventually picked our parents over me, was all the more embarrassing and hurtful for me. My sister is 24 right now and she got engaged a couple of months ago, after dating her boyfriend for the past 3 years. I had always been very supportive of the relationship, right from the beginning, and in fact, I think I was the one who had actually encouraged her to pursue him after her last breakup. Her ex had broken her heart, and she was afraid of saying yes to her fiancé when he asked her out, but I had pushed her to give it a try, and here is where they ended up. But I guess that was not enough to warrant an invitation to her wedding, and in fact, she even told me a couple of weeks back that I shouldn't be expecting an invitation since she didn't really want me at her wedding. And the reason that she told me she did not want me at her wedding was something that I wouldn't have been able to imagine even in my wildest dreams. It was because she was basically picking our parents over me, like I already said. So for context, our parents have moved back here and this happened just 6 months ago. They think the business can run on its own now and their constant monitoring is no longer required, so they have moved back, but I really think they moved back because they were bored of their lives there, and the first thing that they did was try and rebuild a connection with us. Obviously, I did not encourage that at all, and I would try to spend as little time as I could with them. I treated them the same way that they had been treating me for the past 3 decades. I would act distant, and I would always tell them that I was busy whenever they would try to make plans with me. Eventually, they took the hint and stopped trying to bother me, but that's not what happened with my sister. Since she and I have been living separately ever since she graduated college, she had a very different attitude towards our parents and decided to welcome them into her life. Both her fiancé and I were kind of iffy about this idea because parents suck at being parents, and let's not forget that they had been absent from our lives since forever now. It felt a little weird that she was allowing them to just waltz back in like nothing had ever happened, but she believed that everyone deserved a second chance, and since she was about to get married, she was not about to act all vengeful and let that chance slip by. I found it a little weird, but it was her call to make, so I didn't question her about it much. I'll admit, I did feel a little betrayed that she was welcoming them back into her life so openly, but I tried not to let it bother me too much because I really didn't think that it would take away from my importance in her life. However, that's exactly what happened. She started spending a lot of time with our parents, and of late, it felt like she had started avoiding me on purpose. Because she had started acting like she was too busy, and every time I would ask to meet her, she would tell me that she was too busy preparing for the wedding. Even then, I tried not to doubt her too much because to me, even the idea of her choosing our parents over me was just absurd. But I could no longer stay in denial when, a few weeks back, she came over to my place, and after some small talk, she told me that the invitations were going to be sent out in a couple of days, and she told me not to expect one. I was obviously shocked, and I thought it was a joke until she told me that she was serious and that the reason she didn't want me at the wedding was because, with my parents and everything, it would just be too awkward. Apparently, she was embarrassed of the fact that I was the one who had basically raised her, and even though our family knew about it, her fiancé's extended family didn't really know about the entire situation with us and our parents, and she wanted to keep it private. But she believes that it would not be possible with me at the wedding, so she told me that she would definitely have another ceremony with just our family and close friends, but this one, she wanted me to sit out. I honestly didn't understand the logic behind any of this, and I told her that if she had an issue talking about her life with her fiancé's family, then I would just keep my mouth shut about it. And to be honest, it wasn't as if his extended family wasn't going to find out eventually, because they had been dating for a pretty long time and his parents and close family members already knew. But he started getting agitated when I started coming up with solutions and told me that she just didn't want me at the wedding because she was embarrassed that more than her own mother, I had been like her mom, and she couldn't have 2 moms at the wedding because that would raise a lot of questions. Even then, I had struggled a lot to make sense of what she was saying, and even now, I don't fully understand what she was getting at. But basically, she was just saying that she would rather have her own parents present at the wedding to avoid any complications, emotional or otherwise. She believed that me being present at the wedding would lead to a lot of embarrassment and drama for her since our parents would also be there, and she didn't think that we could get through the event together. But instead of not inviting our parents, she had decided to disinvite me instead. And I know that I should have probably freaked out at her, yelled at her, and just kicked her out of my house, but I was so heartbroken that all I could do was just tell her that it was fine and smile at her through my tears. She seemed happy that I was being understanding and told me that she would definitely have a private ceremony later on, and then she left. It was quite insensitive of her to not even understand that I was really upset and decided not to speak to her after that. It was very difficult for me to come to that decision, but there was nothing else left for me to do, and I muted her everywhere so that I wouldn't even have to speak to her even if she contacted me. I also muted her fiancé because I assumed that he would also be in on this and had agreed to it. So for the past couple of weeks, I have had no contact with her or her fiancé, and I was quite taken aback when I received a phone call from her on the day of her wedding, and she was crying on the other end, telling me to come save her. In spite of having no contact with her for the past couple of weeks, I was actually quite concerned, and I immediately called her fiancé up, but he did not respond. I wanted to go to her, but before that, I wanted to make sure that I was actually needed, because even though I was still concerned, things had changed between us. So I decided to call her bridesmaids, and thankfully, her maid of honor picked up the call and explained everything to me. And apparently, her fiancé had no idea that she had told me not to attend the wedding, and he didn't find out until the day before the wedding. In fact, nobody else knew that I was not invited, and everyone had kept asking about my absence from the pre-wedding events, but she had just said that I was not feeling well enough to attend and that I would be there on the day of. But when her fiancé found out the truth, he flipped out at her, and she told him that the reason she had chosen not to invite me was because her parents wouldn't be fine with it. And since they had decided to finance the wedding, she couldn't afford to go against them, and she had to invite me to the wedding, even though it had broken her heart as well. She had told him that not only were they funding the wedding, but they were also funding the honeymoon and were willing to give her money to cover all the expenses that she wanted them to cover for the rest of her life, since she had decided to give them an opportunity to be involved in her life and I hadn't. Essentially, she had been bought out by my parents, and she thought it was a reasonable explanation for her behavior, but I don't think her fiancé was pleased with that. The way her maid of honor, and literally every other guest at their wedding was able to find out what was going on was because her fiancé decided to make a speech and expose what she had done before canceling the wedding and walking out of the wedding. He told everyone about how she had become a sellout because her parents had suddenly shown up after not caring about her their entire lives, and now, they had just waved a wad of cash in front of her face, and she had forgotten everything that I had done for her. And since she had found it so easy to do it to her own sister, he didn't think that she would find it difficult to do it to him as well at some point, and that's why he no longer thought it was a good idea for them to get married. And having said that, he walked away from the altar, and my sister was unable to do anything. After he walked away, she pretty much had a mental breakdown and started sobbing like crazy. It was even more humiliating because, before that, she had been showing off our parents the entire time at every pre-wedding event. She had been talking them up and presenting them to be the best parents in the world who had always been there for her, and the people who had known her forever, her friends and family, were all obviously very shocked, but said nothing. But eventually, the truth came out, and now, everyone knows everything. About half an hour after he had left and refused to come back, even after his parents had requested him to, my sister had decided to call me up because our parents couldn't stand being put in an awkward position and had left as well. She had told me to come save her because she kept rambling about how I was the only one who could put this right and believed that she had learned her lesson, but now, she just wanted me back, as well as her fiancé. After her maid of honor told me everything, she told me that she was not comfortable with this situation either, and she really wanted to be there for her best friend, but after knowing what had happened between the two of us, she thought it should be entirely my call whether I want to show up for her or not, and even told me that nobody would judge me if I didn't. I gave it some thought, but eventually, I decided that I wasn't going to show up. She screwed up, and as much as I hate to admit it, she's an adult and she knew what she was doing, so it was pretty silly to even expect me to come to rescue her and make everything right for her. I can't spend my entire life cleaning up her messes, especially not when she doesn't even value it. And asked for what her fiancé had done, I'm nobody to judge whether it was right or wrong, but I was happy that he had taken a stand for me and respected everything that I had done for my sister, even though she couldn't see it herself. I thought that she needed that wake-up call desperately, and when our parents chose to leave quietly without even trying to comfort her, I guess she understood that she had never been a priority for them, and they were only trying to sneak back into our lives because that was socially acceptable, and since she was getting married, she was a potential source of grandkids as well. It's not like they actually cared about us, they only cared about their image and reputation. So keeping all these things in mind, I decided to let her deal with this on her own that day, and that was 3 days back. After that phone call, she did not try to contact me again until this morning. Even though I had muted her earlier, I had decided to unmute her after that phone call just for my own peace of mind. So this morning, around 6 a.m., which is pretty early, she sent me a message saying that she was really sorry for everything that had happened and she knew that she could apologize for the rest of her life and still not be able to make up for it, but she just wanted to let me know that she really regretted whatever she did and she meant it. She also told me that she had been trying to get through to her fiancé for the past 3 days, but he hasn't been speaking to her ever since the wedding got cancelled. He's even written a check to our parents to compensate for his half of the wedding expenses, and she can't even text him under that pretext anymore. I felt really bad for her, and I even ended up crying a little because I knew how much she loved him and how serious she was about him. I also felt terrible about the fact that we would probably never be able to go back to being the same way ever again, especially after what had just happened. Anyway, she ended the message by telling me that regardless of what happened with her fiancé, she still wanted to make things right with me and she just needed one chance. She asked me to meet her at a restaurant near my house this weekend just so we could talk and at least try to clear the air because she really felt like meeting in person was going to do us both a lot of good and she didn't want to give up on us. But truth be told, I'm not sure if I want to meet her right now. I'm not even sure if I'm ready for it or if I even want to give her a second chance right now because everything is a mess in my head. Things that I had never expected to happen have happened and I know she's going through something, but so am I, so I feel like I need some time. At the same time, I also feel like she has been punished enough and she needs somebody to be there for her, but I'm just not sure if that somebody should be me. I'm just really confused, so I'm here to ask for advice and opinions. So AITA for not wanting to go meet my sister and clear the air with her after her fiancé walked out of their wedding for not inviting me? Edit. Guys. I don't even know why I'm having to add an edit to clarify this, but my sister's fiancé is 6 years younger than me and I've always considered him more of a brother. Yes, we have been close friends ever since he started dating my sister, but that's bound to happen because all three of us used to spend a lot of time together. But that doesn't mean that he's in love with me and that's why he took a stand for me, it just means that he's a decent person and he knew that what my sister was doing was quite screwed up, so he decided to take a stand for what he believed was right. For everyone who is implying that he might have had feelings for me and that's why he acted out like this, I hate to burst your bubble, but you guys are wrong. We're not living in a Wattpad romance novel, thankfully, and here in the real world, sometimes people just stand up for other people because it's the right thing to do and not because they have feelings for the other person. I'm sorry if I'm coming off as offended, but that's because I kind of am, since the implications are just weird and silly. Anyway, the bottom line is that her fiancé and I had always had a very sibling kind of relationship and that was how it should have been. Also, some of you wanted to know how my sister and her fiancé had been doing financially and who was originally supposed to finance the wedding. So both my sister and her fiancé have marketing jobs and make a decent amount of money. They were initially going to split the cost of the wedding 60-40 since her fiancé is an only child and his parents had a wedding fund set aside for him, whereas my sister only has me and they wanted to make it easier for us, which I really appreciate. But then, my parents swooped in and wrote my sister a check and she fell for it, which eventually ruined everything for her. And for us, if I'm being honest. Anyway, that's done now and all we can do is try to move forward. Update 1. Thank you so much to everyone who commented on my post and gave me advice. And also a huge shout out and thanks to everyone who reached out to me to tell me that things are going to be fine. It really means a lot to me because life has been pretty tough so far and sometimes it feels like a bit too much. But I know that I'm strong enough to handle it, so thank you for letting me rant and reminding me that I can do it. Anyway, getting to the point of this post, I decided to speak to my sister and rip off the band-aid. It wasn't easy, but I had to let her know that right now, I just didn't feel like speaking to her and making things right again because it was just a lot of emotional stuff to deal with, and I wasn't in the right headspace for something like that. We were speaking on the phone, so I told her that I just wanted away from her to sort out my feelings because she had really hurt me and I didn't know if I was ready to see her and talk to her so soon. Even when speaking to her on the phone, I felt like I was going to cry, and on the other end, she sounded the same way. But eventually, she told me that she understood where I was coming from, and that she respected my feelings. She told me that she would be waiting for me to come around and even if I didn't, she would still be fine with that because she knew that she had screwed up majorly and it was a big deal that I was speaking to after what had happened. So we ended our phone call on that note and now, I'm just gonna try and process everything that has happened and cope with it. But eventually, I really do want to get back to my sister because at the end of the day, we are all that we have and I know that people screw up, but I don't want to let her go. I know this might not sit well with a lot of people, but it is what it is and we have been each other's family for the longest time. I think I can forgive her once. But that's for the future me to think about. Right now I just want to not think about these things. Update 2. Hi. So it's been a couple of months since my sister's wedding got called off and we haven't exactly been in touch, but she has kept me updated on her life. Sometimes I reply to her, but I try to keep it as brief and impersonal as possible, and other times, if I'm not exactly feeling up to it, I just don't respond. She told me that she had cut her parents off and returned the money that she had taken from them a few days after the wedding got called off, and since then, they have tried to contact her several times, but she has rejected all their attempts. So far, neither she nor I had heard anything from her fiancé, but last evening, she told me that her fiancé had finally called her back to apologize for what had happened at the wedding. Apparently, he had said that he had just been very upset about the fact that her parents had managed to turn her against me with the promise of money in the future and it made him think that she was a sellout, but he believed that he could have dealt with the situation better as well and humiliating her in front of all those people had just not been necessary. He told her that he was just really mad at her and he hated the fact that she hadn't even decided that it was important to speak to him regarding these things before making a decision, so it had made him feel unimportant and of course, he was really upset about how she had treated me as well since he genuinely respected me. All those factors combined, he just couldn't take it and ended up making that speech at the wedding and ruining everything. After that apology, my sister also apologized to him and acknowledged the fact that she had her fault as well and she didn't exactly blame him entirely for what had happened. So they decided to meet each other and get some closure, at the very least. I didn't know what to say, so I just told her that I wish her the best when she goes to talk to him. And I mean it, I really do wish her the best. I really like the two of them together and they should have ended up with each other, but things went south in the most unexpected way. Update 3. Hi. So it's been almost 10 months since I first posted here and a lot of things have changed since my last update. For starters, my parents have moved back because I guess they realized that neither of their daughters needs them here anymore. My sister has started individual therapy and she and her fiancé also decided to patch things up. This happened just 2 months back, since they had decided to be friends, but realized that it was never going to work because they were still head over heels in love with each other, regardless of whatever had happened at the wedding. But they still decided to get couples counseling together because obviously, whatever happened at the wedding was not something that they could just erase. So they had to acknowledge it and walk through it and I really hope that it works out for them because from whatever I've seen, they definitely do belong together. As for me and my sister, we are trying to repair our relationship as well. I finally met her in person a week ago and before that, I was only trying to talk to her on calls and text. But I was still not ready to see her until last week and when we finally met in person, it was like the floodgates had finally been opened and we ended up crying for a good 15 minutes together before we were able to get any words out. She couldn't stop apologizing profusely, and I had to reassure her that regardless of what had happened, I was willing to give her a real chance to fix things and we would be able to move past it if we wanted to. After all, families have gone through much worse and stuck together, so if she's really sorry about everything, I don't see a reason why we can't make it work and I'm sure that with time, these wounds will heal as well. Anyway, I'm still hopeful for the future and I know that things will go well.
Thank you for watching this video. Make sure to like the video and subscribe for more videos like this. Until we meet again.